Welcome, friends, to Beyond the Crucible, the podcast that dares to talk about setback and failure, but not so we can commiserate. It is so we can elevate. I'm Gary Schneeberger, the co-host of the show, and our mission today is to offer you the hope that your crucible experiences, those tragedies and challenges that you faced or might be facing right now, don't define you. They refine you. They did not happen to you. They happened for you. And I don't know many people, heck, I'm going to say it, I don't know anyone who knows that better than the founder of Beyond the Crucible, the host of this show, and my friend Warwick Fairfax. Warwick, we've arrived at a very special episode here. This is the final episode of our summer series. So we've had a great discussion, sort of preparing for it. And I'm looking forward to the conversation we had. I think we'll give folks some stuff that they can learn from.
Absolutely, Gary. This should be a very fun discussion and I think an informative discussion too.
Indeed, indeed. So folks, to level set us again, this is the 9th episode of our summer series, which we have called Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons. And the idea for this was not birthed, but can be traced back to 2 years ago. We did a series on heroes, on movie heroes, on sports heroes, on superheroes, on historical heroes, on just all varieties of heroes. And we had such a good time doing that series. It was fun, but it was also informative that we wanted to revisit films again because, Warwick will tell you why we revisited films again in just a minute. But we chose this time to focus on a different perspective on film, and that is the American Film Institute's list of the top 100 films in the U.S. ever made in the United States. And this week, we are going to wrap up the series, part 9, with the 99th film on AFI's list, and that film is Toy Story. Now, Warwick, I haven't shared this with you beforehand because I want to surprise you a little bit, maybe. We've done now, this is the 9th and final episode, as I've said, of this series. We have covered over the last 2 months, how much time do you think we have? If you strung all the movies together, how long do you think they are?
Out of all these movies, I don't know, like 25 hours. I don't know. You're
so close. It's 23.8 hours, which means
really?
We have devoted time watching movies, unpacking movies, exploring the crucible lessons of movies for basically one full day of time, 23.88 hours. That, I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit for that. That's bravo for us, Warwick. I applaud you for studying that because that surprised me when I did that. Also, just for trivia's sake, the longest film that we did was Schindler's List, which was 3 hours and 15 minutes. And the shortest film is what we're talking about today, Toy Story, which is 81 minutes long, which is like crazy. It's not even an hour and a half. But it goes by, it doesn't go by too quickly. The lessons do land. And we're going to talk about those lessons here today, folks. But Warwick, every episode of this series, this is the 9th time I've asked you to just talk a little bit about why movies are such a great wellspring of insight into bouncing back from crucibles.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think classic movies, they're called classic movies for a reason. And typically you've got a protagonist or a hero up against long odds. There's a crisis, and we don't know if they're going to succeed or not. It tests their character. And very often when somebody goes through a crisis, they're either defined by their worst days, we say on Beyond the Crucible all the time, or they rise above it. And so in these movies and over the course of these weeks, we've had some people who have been defined by their worst day or worst days they've not been able to overcome, and others have been able to overcome huge challenges. And it does test and almost define their character. So by looking at these classic films, it's a good way for all of us to learn, how do you get beyond your worst day? How do you avoid being defined by that day and having your character being defined by just terribly challenging circumstances.
Yeah, and it's great. And since this is the last episode, I'm going to ask another question before we get into the movie, because you mentioned we had a couple of episodes where people did not overcome their crucibles. They leaned into their crucibles. Their lives were defined by their crucibles, in The Godfather and Citizen Kane in particular. But we can learn things from that too. I think one of the great things that I've loved about this series is that no matter the genre of movie, no matter the lead character or the character that we pull out to talk about, there are still big lessons for people to learn, even from those people, maybe especially from those people who let their worst day define them.
Yeah, that's so true. Because you can say, well, I can see the decisions that those characters made in those movies, and I don't want that to be me, because it typically almost always doesn't end well. They don't have happy or fulfilling lives. They typically don't have too many friends. So by looking at what could be, you can say to yourself, what do I have to do to avoid being that person? It can be very instructive.
Yeah. But that's not the case with our friends in Toy Story. Our friends in Toy Story do indeed learn many lessons from their crucibles. The movie Toy Story is the first ever feature film from Pixar, which is now just an enormous company. But this was their first ever film from 1995. And it was the first ever entirely computer-generated motion picture, which is also pretty fascinating from a trivial historical perspective. It was such a critical and commercial success that it has spawned 3 sequels. So we're up through Toy Story 4 now. And Toy Story 5, I read, is scheduled for 2026. So there's more Toy Stories to be told. And the first Toy Story, like all of its sequels, is set in a world where toys interact with and talk to each other. These aren't toys that just kind of lie in a box. They do lie in the box when humans are around, but when humans aren't around, they come out, they talk, they have adventures, they interact, they crack jokes. They have a whole life that we don't know about when we're out of the room. That's one of the most charming things about these movies. And in the original movie that we're talking about, the first Toy Story, it opens with a very iconic song as the opening theme, and that was sung and written by Randy Newman, called "You've Got a Friend in Me." We've all heard it. We can probably all start singing it. If I've created an earworm for you, I apologize. But I wanted to bring it up, Warwick, because that song really perfectly sets up sort of, these days we talk about movie franchises as cinematic universes. The Toy Story cinematic universe is set up pretty well by this song, by establishing the dynamics at work in the film. All the toys live to serve those who play with them, right? It's the toy's life of significance that's being sung about in this song.
This is a really interesting movie. It's funny, a lot of us are familiar with Toy Story. My kids were young when this came out in the 90s, and, Toy Story 2 and 3. But I think I'd learned something as we were preparing and as I was watching that movie through the lens of Beyond the Crucible. And you're right, Gary, that when you look at these toys, their whole life is to serve their owner, in this case, a young boy, Andy. In a sense, their whole lives are a life of significance. It's not about, my worth and value as a toy. Is all about the joy and happiness I can bring to my owner, in this case, Andy. So, they believe that they're there for Andy to play with, for him to have adventures with, to inspire his imagination, for him to have fun. I mean, certainly, when you look at kids who are playing, they're sort of acting out roles and characters and
right.
imagining different, scenarios they're living in. It's a way of really just exploring and becoming who they want to be, in a sense. So play is very helpful for children. And in a sense, toys in Toy Story have this noble profession of helping kids to become fully themselves. You know, as I've said, they live to serve, to make their owner happy. And this is a role that, for the most part, all the toys in Toy Story embrace. There's a shared value of helping Andy be happy and joyful. And, you know, what's interesting, Gary, as you mentioned that song, You've Got a Friend, like many of us, I've heard it numerous times. I'm sure I watched each of these movies a number of times, given that my kids were young at the time. But as we look at the lyrics of this particular song, it really highlights the nobility of the profession, if you will, of these toys and how they see their life as service, their life as significance. There are some wonderful lines in that song. Lines such as, when the road looks rough ahead, you've got a friend in me. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together and can see it through and through. Some other folks might be a little smarter than I am, bigger and stronger. But none of them will ever love you the way I do. It's me and you, boy, and as the years go by, our friendship will never die. I mean, sticking through thick and thin, rough roads ahead, our friendship will never die. I mean, that's incredible. Imagine having a friend that will stick with you no matter what, will be devoted to you, even love you. I mean, that is a powerful and encouraging and uplifting thought. And that's what these toys see as their mission. It's pretty awe-inspiring. I mean, what a mission that these toys feel that they have and do have.
Yeah, and I love what you said at the start of what you were saying there, is that you've watched the movie several times. Your kids were young, and it never occurred to you to see them from this perspective or that perspective. I think one of the reasons that we love doing these kinds of series so much is because, I mean, I've seen The Godfather, for instance. I'll go back to that one. I've seen that like probably 20 times in my life. I've pulled things out of that from a Beyond the Crucible perspective that I'd never thought of before. And the same thing happens with Toy Story. And it's particularly, I think, inspiring that Toy Story is a movie at least partly made for kids, right? It's made for kids and adults because both can enjoy it. But from that, we are able to pull, right? Classic films, classic Crucible lessons. We're able to pull classic Crucible lessons. So let's start diving into some more of those classic Crucible lessons. The movie then moves on. The plot is this: Woody establishes himself quite quickly as a leader of the toys who live in Andy's room. When he learns of Andy's birthday, that Andy's birthday party's been moved up, it's a major crucible, a major crisis for all the toys. Andy's birthday party they thought was going to happen a few days later. It's actually been moved up. And they're all nervous, and it's Woody's job to investigate what gifts Andy gets. He's got to lead that charge to find out. He's got to deploy the other toys to find out what gifts Andy gets at his party, just in case a newer and better toy is given to him. Among the toys that are anxious and nervous and concerned about the toys that are coming into the house are Mr. Potato Head, Slinky Dog, Rex, the Tyrannosaurus, Ham, the piggy bank, and Bo Peep, the porcelain doll, who, spoiler alert, has a bit of a crush on Woody, as we see throughout the film. You'll kind of catch that a little bit. To calm them down, Woody, who is a sheriff, he's got a sheriff's badge on, he's a cowboy, and he's been Andy's favorite toy, it's important to note, since kindergarten. So he's looked to as the leader by all the other toys. He sends a toy soldier, sergeant, and his green army men to spy on the birthday party with a baby monitor. Here's a key point in that scene that plays out. Woody tries to calm his fellow toys and himself that they will have nothing to worry about. It's all going to be fine. It doesn't matter how much we're played with, Woody says. What matters is that we're here for Andy. But his resolve falters when he gets a look at Andy's new toy. Dun, 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 dun. It's a Buzz Lightyear action figure. And that sets the whole plot in motion, and it certainly sets the toys off on some Crucible experiences. So this really does trigger, Warwick, Woody's Crucible, and really the Crucibles of all the toys. That they can and will be replaced, they think. That they don't matter enough, always a fear. That they are only one failure away from losing their purpose, right? Of loving Andy, being there for Andy. That's really a fear all of us, isn't it? All of us can find ourselves worried about.
Absolutely, Gary. I mean, it's interesting in this Toy Story world is that they live to serve and, make Andy happy and joyful. But celebrations and birthdays, they're a time for anxiety. Yeah, because you never know if some better toy might come along. So Woody talks a good game. He leads the meeting and saying it doesn't matter how much we're played with, we're here to serve Andy. But as we're going to see, those are noble ideals. Woody is going to find it hard to live up to his own ideals. And that's a dilemma that many of us face. We can talk a good game. This is what we believe. But ultimately, how good are we at living what we believe? So Woody says, doesn't matter how much we're played with. We're here to serve Andy. It's a great sentiment. But Woody is going to find that. It's all going
to be fine. Right?
Oh,
Nothing to see here. It's all going to be fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Woody's going to find that challenging. And so the toys have competing emotional forces at work on them. On the one hand, their life of significance is to serve their owner, Andy. On the other hand, birthdays and celebrations come along, and they could all be replaced by a better toy, a better model. For instance, in the case of Rex, a better dinosaur. You can clearly see the paranoia as his sergeant and his Green Army men, they're all kind of hiding behind a pot plant. They're relaying blow by blow through the baby monitor. They all feel like they've dodged a bullet as each present is open. It's like, it's a fine present, but
it's
nothing to cause. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're good,
Yeah. Right.
But then something happens. And so Andy's mom pulls out a present from the closet that was hidden and says, here you go, Andy. And it turns out it's a Buzz Lightyear, a very cool toy with lots of buttons and lights and sounds, just the kind of thing to intrigue and mesmerize a young boy. And so, as we'll see, this hits Woody particularly hard, and he has a very hard time dealing with Buzz. Woody has always been Andy's favorite toy. What will happen now? Will Woody continue to be Andy's favorite toy? At this point, we don't know, but it's very clear Woody is awfully anxious, maybe the most anxious in the group.
Right.
His being number one, will he continue to be number one? So, yeah, you can see the anxiety grow moment by moment after they announce it's Buzz Lightyear.
Right. Yeah. And I have to correct you on one point. You said Buzz Lightyear's the kind of toy that any young boy would love. I'm not a young boy. I have one in my office. So okay. I do indeed love Buzz Lightyear. Just to set the record straight. So Buzz, we come to find out, believes he really is an actual space ranger, right? He believes he's not a toy. He is an actual space ranger and does not know that he's just meant to be played with. He impresses the other toys with his high-tech features and becomes Andy's new favorite toy, provoking Woody's jealousy. All the things that you were talking about that Woody feared now come true because suddenly Andy's like, oh my gosh, look how cool his toy is. Woody is relegated off the bed and Buzz now gets the prime spot on Andy's bed. But that's not the only wound that Woody takes on with Buzz's arrival. He's also hurt by how impressed his fellow toys are with Buzz's features. He's losing his respect of his friends, he feels, who up until now have looked to him as, the big toy on campus, right? The big guy, the big, leader of the group. 2 days before the family is set to move, Andy's family is moving to a new house. 2 days before that happens, the family plans a dinner at Pizza Planet. To ensure Andy brings him along and not Buzz, Woody tries knocking Buzz behind the desk with the radio-controlled car, creatively named RC for radio controlled. However, Buzz is accidentally knocked out of the bedroom window instead, and most of the other toys believe Woody has deliberately pushed Woody out the window, nefariously, jealously. Andy takes Woody with him to the restaurant because he's the only toy now that's on his bed. But Buzz chases after the car and furiously confronts him. The two fight, fall out of the car, and they are left behind. Woody laments being a lost toy. After a further quarrel, they hitch a ride to the restaurant on a Pizza Planet delivery truck. Warwick, what are the lessons we can learn from the way Woody treats Buzz that can help us in our relationships with those we lead and those we just do life with? There are lots of missteps. There are lots of assumptions. There are lots of things that Woody does. What can we learn from those things? His initial reaction to Buzz.
Yeah, Woody's initial reaction to Buzz is not good. It's a crucible for Woody because Woody took pride of place as the toy that Andy would take in his bed and sort of the number one spot in his room, the number one toy, if you will, and now he's been displaced. So for Woody, it's a huge crucible. We talk all about don't be defined by your worst day. At this point in the movie, Woody was indeed defined by his worst day. It changed his character. The worst side of him came out. And so Woody treats Buzz poorly. He is very jealous. We can see just how everything that's happening is affecting Woody. So before, all over the walls, you had posters of cowboys and, Western scenes. They're all gone. Now we can see Buzz Lightyear and Space Ranger posters. Well, that's a graphic depiction showing that Woody is no longer number one in the heart of Andy.
Right. Andy even has a Buzz Lightyear bedspread, and he never had a Woody bedspread. So, I mean, he's taken his game up a notch by getting the bedspread of Buzz.
Oh, yeah. And all of that hurts. That is like salt in the wound. Each one of those is like another cut, if you will. And this strikes at the core of Woody's identity as Andy's favorite toy, as you said, since kindergarten. So in a sense, Woody is asking himself, who am I if I'm not Andy's favorite toy? Woody cannot handle this, and in anger and jealousy, he seeks to mock Buzz. And it's not helped, as you say, that by the fact that Buzz is such a big hit with the other toys. Another cut, another wound. Andy can't stand how popular he is, as you say, big man on campus. They're all so impressed with Buzz and all the buttons and the sounds that he has. And Woody's no longer the center of attention. He's getting like almost no attention. Now, amidst this crucible, Woody's friend, and as you say, in a sense, love interest, Bo Peep, who really, likes and admires Woody, she tries to soothe him by saying that Andy will always have a special place for Woody. But Woody doesn't listen and says that Buzz should stay away from Andy. And he continues to mock Buzz, who thinks he's a real space ranger. And Andy's like, oh, come on, you're not a space ranger, you're a toy. And he just mocks him and derides him and belittles him. So I think there's some powerful lessons that we can all learn as we look at Woody's angst and how he handles so poorly the situation with a new toy that has come into Andy's room. Having our identity wrapped up in our position or what others think of us can be very dangerous. In most cases, it's inevitable that we will lose the position we have, whether it's in an organization, how we see ourselves at school, how we think other people see us. Those positions tend not to last forever. So if we have our identity wrapped up in our status or position or what other people think of us, it can well lead to anger, even rage, And it's almost inevitable when you're filled with those negative emotions, you will want to take it out on other people.
Right.
You know, one of the worst parts of human nature is when we feel marginalized, when we feel bad about ourselves. We have this terrible notion that if we put other people down, if we mock them and deride them, even hurt them, somehow it makes us feel better about ourselves. It's one of the worst elements of human nature that can happen when your identity is wrapped up in what others think of you or in your position. In Woody's case, and it can be true more generally, rather than being the best versions of ourselves, we can become the worst versions of ourselves, something that we do not want to have happen. Who wants to be the worst version of themselves? Who wants people to say, gosh, you know, he or she had such promise. There was a time when they just seemed to be really nice, but now they're just awful people to be around. I just want to flee them. They're toxic, really, in so many ways. Nobody wants to be that person.
Yeah, and that's the way that the other toys eventually get, right, with Woody. And it seems silly, right, for me to say that sentence. That's the way that the other toys get with Woody. But what Warwick just said is this movie has excellent lessons for all of us, because we're all one step away, one decision away, one feeling hurt away from landing in that same place that, again, Woody it may sound silly to say it, but it's not. We're all one decision, one setback, one failure away from feeling that way. And we can learn a lot on how not to respond, and then we'll eventually learn how to respond as we go through more of what goes on. So we'll move on now. At Pizza Planet, Buzz, who's still having some troubles identifying himself and acting as a toy, he mistakes a claw crane. You know those crane toys in places like Pizza Planet that drop down and pull toys out of a machine? They never actually do it. They just take your quarters or your dollars and they pretend to do it, and it never happens. I don't think I've won anything in those. Not that I'm bitter. But Buzz mistakes one of those toys, one of those claw cranes, as a spaceship, and he climbs inside with all the little green men who are the prizes that are inside this crane toy, and that's where he starts to get pursued by the bad guy of our story, and that's Sid. Sid is Andy's next door neighbor who is not nice to toys. Sid, he's sadistic. He takes the two, Woody, who climbed in after Buzz to try to save him, get him out. He takes the two from the crane to his house, where they encounter his bull terrier, Scud, and his mutant, quote unquote, toys, which he's made from parts of other toys he's destroyed. Buzz, after watching a television commercial promoting him inside Sid's house, realizes that he is a toy after all. He attempts to fly but falls, breaks his arm, and suffers a mental breakdown. This is Buzz's crisis of identity. Everything he thought he was, he realizes he is not. We can all go through identity crises. Why are they such difficult crucibles to move beyond?
Yeah, Gary, it's an interesting question. A key moment in this movie happens when Buzz sees a TV commercial, and it says that he really is a toy after all. It's like you can get your Buzz Lightyear action figure. It talks about the buttons he has, the lights that turn on, the sounds he makes, and it just hits him like a ton of bricks. It's all true. What Woody has said is true. He is a toy. Buzz is horrified. He is an action figure. He even finds a made in Taiwan stamp on it.
Right.
It's like, I must be a toy. It says where I've been made. He is sad. He's crestfallen. He sees a bird flying outside the window, and he knows that he can't fly. In a moment of resolve, you can see the steely look on his face. He tries to fly out the window, but instead falls short and just falls down the stairs and his arm breaks off. He shakes his head in frustration. I mean, what sort of a tragic, forlorn figure. Buzz is not in his right mind. He is depressed. I mean, he has lost it. He's in a full-blown identity crisis. Buzz thought that he was a real space ranger, part of the Galactic Alliance that seeks to protect the galaxy against the evil Emperor Zurg. That's a pretty big mission, protecting the galaxy. That's not small. That indeed was a life of significance, at least so Buzz thought, and that's a reasonable thought. How could being a mere toy be a life of significance? It felt like such a come down. Here I was, born to save the galaxy.
Right.
And now I'm just a toy. He went comatose with depression and sadness. For the rest of us, a life of significance should not be bound up with the level that we perceive of our mission and vision. It's so easy to think of, hey, my friend or somebody I've seen on TV, they're doing so much more than I am to save the planet, make it sustainable, to help those in need. And what I'm doing in my neighborhood, it's a pinprick compared to what folks that I've read about, folks that I've seen online. But really, that's not the point. It's not a competition to see who can have the best life of significance. We talk all the time to say it's not a competition to see who's had the worst day. Your worst day is your worst day. I think we can also say that about a life of significance. It's not a competition to see who can have the best life of significance. Your best day is your best day in a sense. Your higher purpose, your decision to serve others, that's every bit as important as the next person. You don't measure yourself against other people. If that's your purpose and your mission to help others, your life of significance, nobody should judge you for that. And so there are important lessons here. Don't compare your life of significance against others. Don't think that your life of significance is any less important or less significant than other people's.
Yeah. And what follows all of those revelations is a very key point in the narrative arc of the film. Buzz's crucible paves the way for a true friendship to develop between him and Woody. Even though they're very different, what he's struggling with is feeling like he's lost his purpose. What Buzz is struggling with is whatever he thought he was, his identity is now in doubt. He's not everything that he thought he was. The shared pain of that makes them allies. And there's a key scene in the film. Let's watch that now so we can see how it plays out, and then I'll ask you a few questions about it.
Psst. Psst. Hey, Buzz! Hey, get over here and see if you can get this toolbox off me. Oh, come on, Buzz. Buzz, I can't do this without you. I need your help.
I can't help. I can't help anyone.
But sure you can, Buzz. You can get me out of here, and then I'll get that rocket off you, and we'll make a break for Andy's house.
Andy's house, Sid's house. What's the difference?
Oh, Buzz, you've had a big fall. You must not be thinking clearly.
No, Woody. For the first time, I am thinking clearly. You were right all along. I'm not a space ranger. I'm just a toy, a stupid, little, insignificant toy.
Whoa, hey, wait a minute. Being a toy is a lot better than being a space ranger.
Yeah, right.
No, it is. Look, over in that house is a kid who thinks you are the greatest, and it's not because you're a space ranger, pal. It's because you're a toy. You are his toy.
But why would Andy want me?
Why would Andy want you? Look at you. You're a Buzz Lightyear. Any other toy would give up his moving parts just to be you. You've got wings. You glow in the dark. You talk. Your helmet does that whoosh thing. You are a cool toy. As a matter of fact, you're too cool. I mean, I mean, what chance does a toy like me have against a Buzz Lightyear action figure? All I can do is...
There's a snake in my boots.
Why would Andy ever want to play with me when he's got you?
So, Warwick, after seeing that scene, it makes it really stark to me that crucibles can be a powerful bonding agent for us, can't they?
Absolutely, Gary. In this clip, we see that Buzz feels absolutely worthless. He's forlorn. He has no purpose. He's a mere toy. He's not a superhero space ranger whose mission is to save the galaxy. We see that Woody is trapped under a milk crate. And Woody realizes they need to escape the clutches of Sid before he tortures them, because that's what Sid does. He's not a good little boy, so to speak. He definitely has some anger issues and mutilates toys, and he's got some things going on, put it that way, and they're not good. So they have every reason to fear what Sid is going to do to them. But Buzz is almost comatose. He can't think of anything other than how bad he feels about himself and about his life. He just sits there just staring into space, if you will. Pun not intended, but,
Yeah, he's like one of those people where you say, sometimes crucibles hit so hard, you feel like just crawling into bed and pulling the covers up over your head. That's exactly where Buzz is at here.
Absolutely. He's just staring into nothing, really.
Yeah.
And that's where there is a change in Woody's mood and a change in his character. So up until this point, Woody hasn't been his best self. He's been closer to his worst self. He's been jealous and angry of Buzz. He tries to kind of push him behind a closet so that Andy will get chosen as a favorite toy to go to Pizza Planet. And he ends up pushing him out the window. And who knows what happens to Buzz at that point in the movie. So Woody is not looking good at the moment. He's looking angry, just a person that wants to take out his frustration on other people, especially Buzz. But when he sees how bad that Buzz is feeling about himself, you could see that Woody begins to feel empathy and compassion. And rather than feeling sorry for himself, he begins to just feel so bad for Buzz, who feels so bad about himself. And so Woody begins to empathize and encourage Buzz. And when Buzz says that Woody was right and that Buzz, is a stupid, insignificant toy, Woody pushes back. And he says that being a toy is a lot better than being a space ranger. He says there is a kid, Andy, who really likes Buzz. Any other toy would love to be Buzz. In fact, Woody says, you're a cool toy. He even says that Woody, is not as good as Buzz. Woody has this old, drawstring. You pull the string out his back and he, goes on about all sorts of different things. Well, that's all he has. Buzz, he can, when you press buttons, he says all sorts of different things, has lights, lasers. I mean, objectively, you could understand why Woody would say that.
He's got wings, for Pete's sake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So many things that Woody doesn't have. So, and at least from Woody's perspective anyway, as we'll see, Woody's encouragement and empathy, they do eventually work. So I think the broader principle here is when those we love and care about go through crucibles, it can actually help us with our own crucibles. Because by focusing on others and helping them bounce back from their worst day, it gives our life purpose. It gives our life meaning, and we can actually become a better version of ourselves, which helps us with our own situation. So it's sort of ironic that by Woody helping Buzz with his crucible, he starts thinking less about his own crucible, and it seems like the day is a bit sunnier, things aren't so gloomy. So who knew that crucibles of two people, they can actually help each other. And in this case, we have Woody beginning to bounce back and becoming a better version of himself by focusing on Buzz and his crucible and how he can help somebody that certainly he didn't see previously as a friend. He saw him as a rival. Now I think Woody's beginning to see Buzz as a friend, which is a dramatic turnabout in Woody's attitude. So it's just fascinating how when Woody focuses less on himself and more on others, specifically Buzz, it is a catalyst for Woody getting out of his funk and out of the depths of his own crucible.
Right. You used two words early on in what you were just saying, compassion and empathy. And those really are, back out of this movie for a minute, those really are superpowers when it comes to dealing with crucibles, both to ourselves, right? If we show compassion and empathy to others, like happens with Woody, it's good for us, but it's also to the other people to help buoy their spirits. Those really are compassion and empathy. We don't talk about them all the time here, but those really are superpowers in the Beyond the Crucible arc, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, so true. When you have compassion and empathy for others and for yourself, sometimes when you feel like that the crucible you're in is your fault, whether it is or not is a different question. But when you feel like it's your fault, and that certainly was my case, as listeners know, growing up in a 150-year-old family media business in Australia, and then having gone through a failed $2.25 billion takeover, I was merciless. I just felt like, how could I have been so dumb, make so many dumb decisions, made decisions that ended up hurting people, which never was my desire. So I think in the times in which we feel low, it's important to have empathy and compassion for each other and for ourselves. It doesn't mean you don't learn the lessons from your crucible and take account of that, but having empathy and compassion for ourselves and others, it's really an important part of the process of getting beyond your worst day, getting beyond your crucible.
Right. And spotlighted here in Toy Story. Next up in the film, Sid's toys fix Buzz. Sid tapes Buzz to a rocket then, because Sid's a bad little boy, as you pointed out, planning to blow him up the following day. Overnight, Woody helps Buzz realize that his purpose is to make Andy happy, restoring Buzz's resolve. Sid takes Buzz out to blow him up, but Woody rallies the mutant toys to break the rules and frighten Sid into never harming toys again. Basically, break the rules means they start talking to Sid and doing all kinds of stuff like that. That's what breaking the rules is. Funny part in the film for sure. But the key point here, I think, Warwick, is the mutant toys are nothing like Woody and Buzz. And yet Woody and Buzz could not have moved beyond their crucibles without them. That's a powerful truth, I think, isn't it, about our fellow travelers? Our fellow travelers, Warwick, don't need to be like us. They just need to offer complementary skills and passions to us, right?
Absolutely. Initially when Woody and Buzz see Sid's toys, they're afraid. They're scared.
Yep.
Because Sid, being the challenged young boy that he is with lots of issues.
Well said. Well said.
There are no bad people. It's more just challenging upbringings and poor choices, I think is the better way of putting it. So Sid has mutilated these toys, swapped body parts around, and they do indeed look scary and intimidating. But Woody comes to realize that they're not bad toys. Woody enlists Sid's toys in a plan to help both free Woody and Buzz and to give Sid's toys their own freedom in a sense, and certainly a better life. And so now he hatches this plan in which Sid sees the toys, they can all talk, and he is scared. I mean, he is scared witless. And Woody gets in Sid's face in a sinister way, almost sneers at him and says to Sid, "So play nice." Right, the implication being, if you don't, there'll be, repercussions. You don't want to know what those are. Sid, being the not very nice kid that he is, knows exactly what he thinks Woody means by that. He doesn't have to be painted a picture. So Sid runs off.
He's probably been punished before in his life, Sid, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. So Sid runs off and is now very afraid of his own toys. So, like Woody, we need to realize that just because people are different from us, they might behave different, it doesn't mean that we should be scared or intimidated by them. By working with those who are different than us, we can often accomplish things much greater than we ever could have without them. So Woody, in a sense, was able to free both he and Buzz and Sid's toys by working all together. But it could not have happened if he didn't find a way to get Buzz out of his funk and, get out from under the milk crate and then enlist all of Sid's toys to, in a sense, freak Sid out so that they could all escape, at least Woody and Buzz, and so that Sid wouldn't abuse his toys any further. So it's a powerful lesson that people that are different than us can often be the ones who can most help us accomplish things that we never could have without them. So it's a powerful lesson.
Yeah. I love that that you keep saying the words powerful lesson and talking about this movie and how we can apply it to our lives as we journey beyond our crucibles. Let's finish the journey of the toys in this film. Buzz and Woody are now freed and they pursue Andy's moving truck. But Sid's dog, who's just almost as bad as Sid, Scud is Sid's dog. Scud attacks Woody. Buzz stays behind to fight off the dog. Woody climbs into the truck and pushes RC out to rescue Buzz. Still thinking Woody tossed Buzz out of the window, the toys toss him out of the truck. Buzz and Woody pursue the truck on RC, and the other toys see them and realize their mistake. RC's batteries run out, though, forcing Woody to ignite the rocket strapped to Buzz. This is getting exciting, folks. Buzz opens his wings to sever the tape just before the rocket explodes. He and Woody glide through the sunroof of Andy's mom's car, landing safely inside. For all intents and purposes, that's the wrap of the movie. There's a bit of a postscript. The toys listen in on the Christmas gift opening in the new house of Andy's family. Mr. Potato Head is delighted when Andy's little sister, Molly, gets a Mrs. Potato Head for Christmas. Woody and Buzz jokingly ponder what gift could be worse than Buzz. I mean, come on. What gift could possibly outstrip Woody, the sheriff, and Buzz, the space ranger? What toy could possibly do that? Well, it turns out in this particular case, no toy, because Andy gets a puppy. And the movie ends with Woody and Buzz sort of nervously smiling at each other like, okay, this is going to be interesting. Taking all that into consideration, Warwick, everything that we've talked about here about Toy Story, what's the one big thing you hope listeners and viewers take away from this movie?
When new people come into our lives at work or at home, it's easy to feel threatened. And we can feel less than, especially if we think they're better, quicker, faster, smarter than we are. And frankly, because there's a lot of smart, quick, and fast people in the world, it's somewhat likely that we will run into people that are better than us. And what's worse is we might think we have a superpower, whether it's good at math, good at writing, good at athletics. There's nothing worse than somebody coming into your life that's 2 or 3 times better than we are in our chosen superpower. That feels particularly horrendous and terrible. Right. I hung my hat on this superpower and then. Right.
At some point in our lives, we're all going to be Woody faced with Buzz, right? I mean, that's truth.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're all going to have a Buzz that comes into our lives, a bit like a buzzsaw, I guess.
Indeed.
It's going to come screaming into our lives from infinity and beyond, right? It'll come into our lives. So we can feel less than, we can feel this new person's better than us, and it can significantly affect our identity and sense of self. And that's exactly what happened in different ways to Woody and Buzz. Woody felt he wasn't as cool a toy as Buzz and was jealous of Buzz being Andy's favorite toy. At least that was certainly Woody's perception. And then you've got Buzz, who learned once he was a toy and not a space ranger, that he had his own crisis of identity. Who am I if I'm not here to save the galaxy against the evil Emperor Zurg? I'm a toy? Come on, that feels so much less than. That feels like I'm a non-entity. My life's significance is nothing. I'm a zero. I mean, he just felt terrible about himself. So we cannot see our identity in our position or what others think of us, or even how important a life of significance we feel we're having compared to the other person who we might perceive that their life significance is greater than ours. We should never compare our life as significance. If we feel it's our calling, our purpose, our way to serve others, that's enough. That's all that matters. We don't have to compare how many people we've helped versus somebody else. There'll always be somebody else that we might perceive has helped more people and done more good. It's like, did we discover, penicillin? Did we help create clean drinking water in Africa? I mean, for most of us, the answer will be, well, no, we didn't accomplish something that we think is at such a high level, but that's not the issue. Just as I said before, our worst day is our worst day. Our life of significance is our life of significance. It's not a comparison game. So, when we decouple our identity from our position and what others think of us, it allows us to see new team members as allies and potential friends. And when we stop comparing our life of significance to others, that also makes it far easier for us to bond with others and indeed respect them. So, in fact, when we see others not as threats because they might have achieved more in their lives or have perceived a higher level of life of significance, which I've just said is an erroneous way of thinking, when we see them more as people that can help us and we can help them, it allows us to achieve our own life of purpose and significance in ways that we couldn't have achieved otherwise. Again, it's not a comparison game, but by seeing others as potential allies, it enables us to achieve things we never could have, because part of the beauty about differences in different skills, different perspectives, different heritages, and different backgrounds, there'll be things that we can learn from other people's skills that they have that we don't have, that can help us be our best selves and achieve things that we never could have otherwise.
Yeah. I had not thought about this. I kid you not. I'm not making this up. I'd not thought about this until we're wrapping up our 9th episode in our series on films with crucible moments in them and crucible lessons in them. And you're talking about something very important. We can't compare lives of significance. I often, when we're writing about this, I will abbreviate life of significance like that, LOS, right? If you do that, if you compare lives of significance, folks, you do that, you lose.
So well said.
That is what I'm going to take away. One of the things I'm going to take away from this.
And if you don't mind, I love that. Not only if you compare your life of significance to others will you lose, you'll also be lost. You'll be lost in self-recrimination and in a spiral of doubt and self-persecution and bitterness and anger, and you lose and you are lost. Who wants to be that person? So don't compare yourself to others or their lives of significance.
Okay, I've got an idea, Warwick. Let's take this on the road to colleges and teach a course in the crucible lessons of Toy Story. I think we could set the world on fire.
Well said.
So what we always do at the end of these episodes, folks, and this is the last time we'll do it on the end of the episode on our Crucible Movies, Crucible Lessons series, is questions, points of reflection. What that we talked about here can you reflect on? And we've landed here where we think this is a good place of reflection for you. And that's ask yourself this question: how are your fellow travelers different from you in terms of experience, personality, perspective, etc.? And then how can you see these fellow travelers as people who can help you rather than as a threat to your identity? Because that's the key that was learned in this film, and that's a key that we all need to learn. Warwick, I'm sad. I'm sad that we've come to the final moments. The closing credits are rolling on our summer series. I have not asked you this in advance, but we've got a couple minutes left. Is there anything that stands out for you? Anything you want to just say as we wrap up this last episode?
It's been quite the journey going through these movies, from The Godfather to Citizen Kane and Singing in the Rain, It's a Wonderful Life. I won't go through them all, but, then Toy Story. I mean, so many fabulous movies, Schindler's List, To Kill a Mockingbird, so many great movies. And I've learned so much about how each of these characters handled their crises. In some cases, like in those early movies, Citizen Kane and The Godfather, they were indeed defined by their crucible. But in the others, they began to see their own worth. When we look at It's a Wonderful Life and George Bailey, he thought to himself, I just live in this small town and I kind of inherited this building, savings and loan. There's a huge world out there to see and I could be this big business owner and entrepreneur. But he comes to realize he has a huge impact on the town of Bedford Falls and caring for them and providing housing through affordable mortgages and all of the work that he does. So many examples of where people realized, I'm not less than Woody in this latest movie. Okay, maybe there's another toy that has more bells and whistles than he does, but it's not about who's Andy's favorite toy. Each in their own different ways, and especially together, can have great lives of significance, can help each other, can help Andy. So I think I've learned so much in this series that, when we go through crucibles, we go through our worst day, it doesn't have to define us. We can find our own journey back by allowing people to help us. It's not about comparing crucibles. It's not about comparing lives of significance. We need to find our own unique path because that leads to joy, that leads to fulfillment, that leads to a lasting legacy, a lasting life of significance. So I think there's so much to learn from these movies about what a life well led, a life well lived looks like, and what a legacy that you can be proud of and others can be proud of looks like. And so much of it is just avoiding comparison. Avoid comparison with others, be it crucibles or lives of significance. Be happy in your own skin. Be happy in how you're wired, the beliefs and values that anchor you, how you live that out. Just be content with who you are. It's your journey. It's your path. Don't try to follow other people's paths and tracks. Just be content with who you are and your journey and your life of significance that you feel called to. That's really a key to a joyful and fulfilling life.
Folks, I've been in the communications business long enough to know when the final word's been spoken, not just on a subject, but on a series. And Warwick has just spoken it. Warwick, before we go, going back to the start of this episode, I want to say you've got a friend in me. Don't ever forget that. And we will be back, even though we're done with this series, folks. We'll be back next week with another episode, talking to someone just like you who's gone from trials to triumphs. See you then. Welcome to a journey of transformation with the Beyond the Crucible assessment. Unlike any other, this tool is designed to guide you from adversity to achievement. As you answer a few insightful questions, you won't just find a label like the helper or the individualist. Instead, you'll uncover your unique position in the journey of resilience. This assessment reveals where you stand today, the direction you should aim for, and crucially, the steps to get there. It's more than an assessment. It's a roadmap to a life of significance. Ready? Visit beyondthecrucible.com. Take the free assessment and start charting your course to a life of significance today.